notice on that for goodness. Anyway. All right. Just for those people who don't know me, and for anybody who's on Facebook who doesn't know me, I'm Dr. Nancy Bertelman. I'm the owner, chiropractor, and doctor here at Lakeland Natural Health. We do nutrition response testing, which looks at the organ systems, seeing which ones are working well, which ones are not working as well. And we use whole food supplementation to help the body heal while we're looking at the food logs to make sure that we're eating great nutrition. And I see through the peripheral vision, we've got folks coming in. Hi, no, come on in. So today, what we're going to talk about is the science of food. So we wonder, why do we eat food? What do we get out of the foods that we eat? So for most of us, I would say, for myself a long time ago, I would say I eat food because I like it. I really don't know what it does for me. It's necessary. I'm hungry and I eat. But we actually get essential nutrients out of our foods. Plants, animals need those nutrients in order to grow, maintain their tissue, heal, and reproduce. We would not be able to do any of those things without the foods that we eat. Our foods in the human world are made out of 3 different categories. Proteins, which we're going to get from our meat sources, from eggs, and we're going to get proteins from our vegetables. Humans cannot make all of the proteins that we need, and so the essential proteins are easiest gotten from our meat sources. However, for our vegetarian and vegan family, we can use complementary proteins, beans and rice, for example, and still get complementary proteins that are going to work well in that place. Carbohydrates are going to be essential for fuel. So where our proteins are building blocks, it builds our tissues, our organs, our tendons, our hair, our nails, carbohydrates are going to give us the fuel. So if we're thinking about a car, since I talked about my dad being a mechanic, the proteins are going to be your wheels, your tires, your doors. The carbohydrates are going to be the energy source, the fuel that we put into that car to make it go. And so our body uses carbohydrates to convert from glucose to our energy source, ATP, adenosine triphosphate. Our body breaks down that phosphate, and that's how we get the energy to get us going on a daily basis. And then finally, we have fats. I know that for a long time, fats were not considered an essential nutrient. We thought we could go fat-free, and we found over time that that was absolutely false. Fats are an essential part of our diet. We must have fats in order to have cell wall integrity, skin integrity, brain integrity, heart health, hormone production. So fats are not the devil that they were thought to be with the fat-free fad that we had several years ago. They are an essential nutrient. Enzymes are the catalyst or the movers of the body's need for energy and the building blocks. For example, we take in protein, but we can't digest the meat as we take it in. Something has to break it down into its smaller parts so that our body can absorb those nutrients, and those are enzymes. Same thing happens with carbohydrates. We can't take in a piece of a vegetable or a piece of fruit and use it as it is in its raw state. Our body has to break down those particular products into their individual carbohydrate chains so that our body can actually utilize the energy from the carbohydrates. And the same thing goes for fats. The human body has approximately 75,000 different types of enzymes that do all kinds of products and processes all during the day. The way I used to describe it is that if we were to walk from Florida to Louisiana, it would take us days. Or we can take an airplane and fly there in about 45 minutes to an hour. That's exactly what the enzymes do for our body's processes. It would take us years to digest meat into its amino acid components, much longer than we actually have on Earth. Our bodies are not capable of breaking down the need for our food's constituent parts in a timely manner without digestive enzymes. We get our digestive enzymes naturally from raw fruit and vegetables. I skipped a slide. In this slide, we're talking about the different types of digestive enzymes that we need specifically to break down the different food particles. Protease is going to break down proteins, and we have lots of them. They start in the mouth, they go to the stomach, and the pancreas and the intestines release those protease inhibitors, and that's where we're going to digest our meat products, our amino acids. Lipase breaks down lipids. We find that in the liver and the pancreas. So one of the things that folks can have a problem with is gallbladder. When they eat fatty foods, they have gallbladder attacks, and that's because that gallbladder isn't working optimally enough, but that gallbladder is actually going to store some of those digestive enzymes needed to break down those fats. Amylase breaks down carbohydrates. Stomach pH is extremely important. The stomach pH is very acidic. Acidic to the point where if we actually took a sample of the stomach pH and put it on our skin, it would burn our skin. The stomach pH is hydrochloric acid in its raw form. Our stomach is capable of handling that type of pH because of the mucus layer that's inside the stomach. But this is a physiological element that we actually need in order to break down our foods. The stomach acid is also our first line of defense against invaders. So if we happen to eat something that has a parasite on it, if we're outside picking blueberries, which I love to do, right now is blueberry picking season, and it has a parasite on it, or a fungus on it, or a bacteria on it, and I eat that raw, right out of the ground, my stomach is going to protect me because my first line of defense is the stomach acid, which is going to kill off the bacteria or the parasite or the fungus that we might eat accidentally when we're eating raw things. We don't think about that because we live in a very clean environment these days. But it has been in the day where folks would pick their vegetables right out of the garden, rinse them off, not thoroughly clean them, and eat them right out of the garden. Our stomach has the capability of protecting us from that. That's why we need stomach acid. Low stomach acid is usually the cause of gastric reflux. In today's society, we think that gastric reflux is caused by too much stomach acid, but it is actually opposite. What ends up happening is that if we have low stomach acid, due to many things, we'll talk about some of the things that cause low stomach acid, the food sits in our stomach too long. It becomes rancid or putrid or ferments. So we're talking about the breakdown of proteins, carbohydrates, and fats. Our food is only supposed to stay in our stomach for a small period of time. Each individual food substance will have its length of time that it's supposed to stay in the stomach, but if it stays there longer than it's supposed to, then it kind of starts to rot. Those gases regurgitate through the esophagus and give us the perception of gastric reflux. Now, gastric reflux can be very dangerous. You can cause ulcerations in the esophagus. You can cause Barrett's esophagus, which the actual veins in the esophagus are bulging. So these are not things that we take lightly. However, what we try to accomplish is getting those good foods in that body. The body needs good B vitamins. It needs to have hydrogen-producing elements, chloride-producing elements. We need to have intrinsic factor coming from the stomach so that we're creating good stomach acid, so that we're actually digesting our food in a timely manner. It goes from the stomach to the intestines, where it's going to be absorbed into our bloodstream and utilized by the body. Combining foods. This is the other thing that we've kind of gotten wrong over time. And I've actually given you folks this really cool handout, and we'll go over this handout in a few moments. But combining foods is also very important. Remember, we're talking about the need for stomach acid and the need for certain digestive enzymes to break down our foods. If we're combining foods improperly, we can actually have an accidental reduction of stomach acid due to a food that we've taken in with something that needs a lot of stomach acid. For example, steak needs a lot of stomach acid. We need that pH to be as high as possible. So we want to make sure that we're not eating steak with something starchy, like a potato. Does that sound familiar? Steak and potato is super common as a meal, especially a dinner meal right before we go to bed at night in America. Starches will actually decrease our stomach acid. And so the meat that we've just eaten needs a lot of stomach acid, and the potato that we've eaten with it decreases our stomach acid, and so that meat stays in our system longer. We feel burning, regurgitation. In the morning, we feel full or bloated. It's because our body didn't digest those products equally or in a timely manner. The other thing we typically do wrong in America is we drink a lot of liquid when we eat our meals. So the proverbial steak with potato and a large sweet or unsweet iced tea, or the morning meal with eggs and bacon and a large or multiple cups of coffee, lots of water even though water is good for us, we don't want to dilute our stomach acid right at the time we're eating a meal. So very small amounts of water, 1 to 3 ounces is actually going to be optimum, just enough to rinse our mouth while we're eating our food. Where we want to take the maximum amount of water that we drink during our day is 30 minutes before a meal, so we want to drink water between meals or 2 hours after a meal. So the idea is to stay hydrated throughout the day and not wait for our meals to not only feed our body, but quench our thirst. So those are not very good combinations. Is everything making sense? We're like, I see a lot of moments out there, like, I've done that, I've done that, I've done that, I get it. We're going to talk about thermodynamics. Now, we're not really going to get into thermodynamics, I just kind of put that out there. But the idea of thermodynamics is that energy is neither created or destroyed, but that energy can move from form to form as needed. Basically what we're trying to say is that plants are going to absorb energy from the sun, but that energy hasn't changed, it's just, that energy hasn't gone away, it's just changed to photosynthesis to allow that plant to absorb nutrients. The plant grows, that needs energy, and it stores energy. We harvest the plant. We take that plant, we chop it up, we eat the plant. So we're actually just transmitting energy from the entire growing process from one form to the other until our body uses that energy and we do work. We breathe, our heart beats, we move around, we have activities, and we eat. All of those things require energy, and so the body and the environment is just transferring energy from one form to another form. The idea behind weight loss is that if we're taking in fewer calories than the body uses, we will actually liberate stored energy. Human beings store energy in the form of fat on our frames. That's what the body does. If we take in too many calories, the body will utilize all the calories that it can. The ones that it can't utilize, it stores. It is a protective mechanism that we have had from the beginning of time. In the day, when we had feast or famine, the body was always trying to prepare for that famine by holding on to as many extra calories as it could, by storing them on the body. So basically, we're taking them with us. And so when we're wanting to lose weight, we actually reduce our calorie intake and force our bodies to use those extra calories that we've stored. That is in a petri dish in the perfect world. In reality, human beings are very, very dynamic. Yes, that holds true. When we take in fewer calories than we use, the body will liberate extra calories from our frame. However, all calories are not created equal. There's no way for us to be able to understand how dynamic the body is. So what we're trying to explain here is that if we're taking our calories from refined sugars, refined white flours, processed foods, we're actually not feeding the body the essential nutrients that are required for the body to do all of its processes in order to liberate those extra calories. And the body will continue to store those calories because it realizes, okay, we're taking in calories from this donut. I don't really know what to do with all these extra calories. Yes, she stopped taking in more calories than she needs to survive, but these are not good calories. They're not nutritious calories. I can't build anything on these calories. I'm not getting nutrients, so I am no way gonna liberate this extra caloric calories that I have on the frame for these less donut calories. For example, when I was working out with my personal trainer, I would tell him, and I seriously thought this is before we did nutrition response testing and I understand the body and the way we take on calories differently. But I would say if I ate a McDonald's hamburger every day, but it was only up to 1,000 calories a day, I still have to lose weight if I'm coming to the gym and working out. And that was actually false. I did not lose weight going to the gym every day and continuing to eat McDonald's. So we lose weight when we actually eat good quality foods and the body can fill up with nutrients and allow our bodies to liberate those extra calories because it sees that it's living in a healthy environment. Raw fruit and vegetables are the place where we're going to get most of our great digestive enzymes. So when we're looking at thermodynamics, we need those nutrients from those raw fruit and vegetables, and in some cases, it takes our body quite a bit of energy to liberate the calories from those raw fruit and vegetables. I think it's celery in particular, that it actually takes our body more calories than we've eaten from that celery to actually take the nutrition out of that celery. So if you're a celery lover, double thumbs up, that'll work. Combining foods to work for the optimal digestion, and this is when we talk about this chart. So when we're looking at combining our foods to make sure that we're not disrupting our digestion, this was the easiest chart that I could find. Some of them get very, very complicated, and I was like, yeah, no, I'm not gonna do that to anybody. This one, we pick one item from step one. So we pick a fresh fruit, or we pick a starch, or we pick an animal protein, or we pick nuts and seeds. Once we've picked from category 1, we go to category 2 and we fill the rest of our plate with all of these beautiful vegetables. Basically what this is trying to say is that fruit should be eaten with nuts and fruit with vegetables. Starches can be eaten with vegetables, but fruit cannot be eaten with starches. We can have an animal protein source and we can fill our plate with beautiful vegetables, but animal proteins should not be eaten with starches, like potatoes, for example. That's why we're only picking one from category 1. So we're not going to pick across the line. We're not going to pick a fruit and a starch, because they need different digestive enzymes and different stomach acid pHs in order to digest properly. If we mix them, we reduce the optimal digestion from the stomach's point of view. Does that help? Does that make sense? Mm-hmm. Number 3 is a weight category. So if we want to eat fruit, it says that fruit is best eaten alone. Fruit is very easily digested. Fruit doesn't stay in the body for very much time. And so if we eat fruit alone, then the digestion time from the stomach into the intestines is very quick. So fruit is actually one of the products that they say is a great midday snack. So we have breakfast, we have a great breakfast with eggs and some vegetables. And then a couple of hours later, we have an apple or melons. But we don't eat them together for breakfast. So we don't eat an egg with vegetables and a fruit bowl. That would be a stomach error and a digestion error. Does that start to make a little bit of sense? So what we're trying to do is optimize not only stomach acid, so that the stomach acid stays optimum for every individual food source that we can eat, and the food sources are proteins, carbohydrates, and fats, but we also want to make sure that we're not eliminating any digestive enzymes that might be necessary to digest those particular products, because remember we have protease, amylase, and lipase. So I know it sounds a little bit complicated, but this is why I gave this chart. So if we keep it simple and just pick one from category one fruit, one starch, or an animal protein, or nuts and seeds, and just pick one of those, we can combine them with all of our vegetables in category 2, and that would be an optimal way to eat so that you're getting maximum digestion. Does that make sense?
Okay, I'm confused.
Yes, ma'am? What's the question?
So is one fruit and then one of either starch, animal, or nuts, or is one of any of those four?
One of any of those.
Four.
So
Okay.
in category 1,
Just one of, that's what I was.
yes. In category 1, we have 4 options.
So,
We pick either fruit,
okay, that's,
or a starch, or an animal protein, or nuts or seeds. Once we pick one from one of the 4 categories, we mix that meal with the vegetables from category 2. And then our fruit should be eaten completely separate if we want to extract the maximum nutrient from those products. And that really is the goal, is to extract the maximum nutrients from the foods that we're eating so that we're giving the body as much as we possibly can. We want to remember the water or the liquid. We want to keep it down to 1 to 3 ounces so that we're not diluting our stomach acid. Yes, ma'am?
Where does bread come in?
Sorry, where does bread come in, everybody?
It doesn't.
Bread doesn't come in.
You're asking the wrong person.
Good question.
No.
Good question.
We don't talk bread here.
Breads are part of those processed foods where they've actually, in white breads and even in some of our whole wheat breads, they've actually stripped away the germ, and all we have left is the white processed flour. And they go even further by bleaching that flour and then enriching that flour by putting vitamin isolates into that bread to hopefully trick your body into thinking that it's getting some type of nutrient. What we do with breads here in the office, and I grew up in New Orleans. We had French bread for every meal. That was life. We transition through some of our sprouted grains, and then sometimes we can even go to some of our ancient grains like barley and rye. Some folks like those, some folks don't. For me, in particular, I grew up on white French bread, and I can do Dave's Killer bread or Ezekiel bread, but I just choose not to. So for me, I just chose not to do bread because
those are okay. Those type are okay.
those are better, and we always ask you to bring them in so that we can test them on your system. Because remember, your body is going to be the smartest thing that we have in this office to let us know if something is a yes or a no. Yeah. All right.
What about bread made with almond flour?
Yes, ma'am, that is always gonna be an option. Our alternative flours, so the almond flour, the coconut flour, some of those other nut flours that they have out there. And again, looking at some of our ancient grains like barley flour or rye flour, a lot of people test really well for those products. And finding those recipes is kind of fun. I mean, I've tried some recipes where I've Googled something and I've made it and I'm like, this is absolutely awful. There's no way I'm ever gonna eat this again. But more often than not, is I've been very successful finding some alternative flour things. Last month, we had an alternative chocolate cake made with almond flour and it was a big hit. People were really loving that. So it's a great product to transition through, and it's a great alternative to give us something that kind of reminds us of some of our old nostalgic things that might not have been so good for us. So yes, almond flour would be a yes.
So that's considered a
That would be part of the nuts and seeds.
nuts and seeds. So
Yes, ma'am.
all you could have then really for breakfast would be the bread and vegetables.
And vegetables, yes.
Gosh,
If we were looking at it that
Maybe
way,
making your own bread is a better option using the alternative flour.
that's what I do.
making your own
I've never
bread.
made my own bread in my life,
Yeah.
but I would
Making your own bread is always gonna be an option. Overall, when we're looking at food, making your own food at any time is always gonna be a better option. You know exactly what you're putting in your foods. You have total control. The other thing I've done is that I've taken recipes that have had great sugars like maple syrup or honey, and I've been able to reduce those sugar content. So instead of the half a cup of maple syrup, maybe I only use 1/8 of a cup. And that's something that we transition through as well, because remember, our taste buds are trainable.
Yeah.
We can teach our taste buds to like good quality foods and reduce the sugars that we've eaten. I grew up drinking Coca-Cola. I couldn't drink a Coca-Cola today. If you paid me $1 million, I would try for $1 million, but still, that's just not something that my body can actually accept anymore. It's so sweet, and the colorings and the additives, they give you heartburn. So, you know, you can train your taste buds to do anything, and that's why we transition slowly with our food logs. We go from our white refined breads to Ezekiel bread or Dave's Killer bread or one of the sprouted grains. And then maybe we go through an alternative flour like buckwheat or rye. And maybe we decide that that's not something that we like at all, and we're just like, fine, I'm just not gonna eat bread. And that's okay too. We wanna wait a couple of hours before we switch categories. So for example, let's say we have fresh fruit for breakfast and a whole bunch of vegetables. We wanna give that body an opportunity to digest those foods before we add more foods. But having smaller meals more frequently actually will keep our energy levels higher, keep our metabolism up, and keep our insulin down so that we keep our sugar levels nice and steady. So for those people who might have sugar handling problems or energy problems, eating smaller meals more frequently can help to solve those problems. And that's the end of that. Does anybody have any other questions?
I would like to make a comment,
Yes?
that if I juice in the morning, which is vegetables and fruit, that will hold me even more than I can say even eggs. So it is so true where, I mean, I have just juicing because it's good for my body, not even not realizing that how it's much better, how I noticed how
Well,
it works.
in the same sense of what you're saying is that I've noticed personally that the more good quality things I eat, the less I have cravings, the more full I feel, and the more energetic I feel longer through the day. So you're absolutely right. In the day when we were eating pancakes and waffles, we were hungry. It's the Chinese food syndrome. You eat Chinese food and 30 minutes later you're hungry. It's because it's so high in refined white things and processed bits and pieces and very little nutrients, potentially, that we feel hungry. When the body is actually getting tons of nutrients, juicing is a great way to get high nutrients. The body is actually filling up and not needing anything extra because it's actually been satisfied with vitamins, minerals, digestive enzymes, and phytonutrients that the body is looking for to get its daily processes going on. So you're absolutely right.
But didn't you say that juicing, the alternative is to eat the whole fruit instead of the juice because the juice is going strictly
Yes,
quickly into your bloodstream?
that's exactly right. When you're looking at the difference between juicing, blending, and eating the whole fruit, blending and eating the whole fruit is actually a better option when you're
Because
coming,
it takes longer to process.
because we're maintaining the fiber, and that fiber releases those sugars less quickly.
Yeah.
So we're not spiking our insulin levels.
That's okay.
If we're juicing vegetables, we are still liberating all of the sugars from the vegetables, but the carbohydrates are a little bit different. And if we're using it as an interim to get from eating refined white sugars for breakfast, going through juicing so that we're getting that little bit of sweetness, what I tell folks is that instead of those refined white sugars or those processed flours, if we're using fruit and vegetables more on the sweeter side, we're satisfying that sweet tooth while we're filling up the vitamins, minerals, and digestive enzymes that we're going to be getting from those products, and eventually it's very easy to transition from those into something where we're eating the whole fruit more consistently. But you were absolutely correct. Yes, ma'am?
Can you talk about the neutral items?
Yes, neutral items are going to be those things that when you mix them with, well, one of them from category 1, they don't upset the stomach acid, and they don't need or require different digestive enzymes, so they're not upsetting the digestive enzymes. Our body is capable of digesting, for example, if we pick a steak and we eat it with broccoli, the broccoli is not going to decrease our stomach acid and leave that steak sitting in there for a long period of time. Unlike if we eat the steak and a potato, that potato reduces our stomach acid, and so that steak stays in there and becomes rancid. So that's why those items are considered neutral, because we can add them to any one of the categories above, and it's not going to upset our digestion. And that's the only reason they're considered neutral in this text.
Did you separate, like, you know, of course, I'm going to what I like, the dark chocolate. So, we gotta go for good stuff. We gotta go for chocolate. So, do you eat one from step 1 and then you can have chocolate in step 2, or is this chocolate like more of a snack separate? How do you incorporate that into it?
Okay.
In conjunction with.
So are my eyeballs,
It's
70% or darker chocolate.
70% or
so
darker
we're
chocolate.
looking at the 70% Keiko.
Yeah.
Okay, yes. I think in this particular context, you can have small amounts of dark chocolate, but we're definitely not talking about the whole bar. We're talking about
Right,
a
little square.
single
You can't get
square
past a square.
of dark chocolate. Yes, that's exactly
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
It's a lot better.
That's
Yes.
exactly right. Yes. So that is in the neutral category. That would be something that if we wanted a full meal, we could have a steak, steak, broccoli, and a small square of chocolate, and that would be a win-win. You would get the entire meal plus dessert.
Okay, that sounds good.
And you can use more than one neutral vegetable in your meal.
Yes, you can use more than one of the neutral vegetables. That is correct. You fill your plate full of neutral vegetables. So any of them that are considered neutral in this category can be eaten with one from above and not cause any upset in digestion.
So how do you drink your coffee with your breakfast?
Well, in theory, you should be drinking your coffee or any of your liquids 30 minutes before or 2 hours after. Or limit your intake to 1 to 3 ounces. So when we're drinking gallons and gallons of coffee, we're going to dilute our stomach acid and we're going to reduce digestion. So what we're talking about here is optimizing digestion, and I understand this would be a perfect world, and all we try to do, I tell folks I'd like to live to be 120. I'm 49. Between now and 120, I'm going to perfect everything I need to perfect. One small step at a time. There's no way to achieve utopia every single minute of every single day, but we do the best we can every time we have an opportunity to make some choices, we try to make the best choices that we have. So instead of maybe going for that second cup of coffee first thing in the morning, we wait and give our bodies a chance to digest, and then we have a cup of coffee later on in the afternoon. If we can drink coffee, decaffeinated is also an option. So it's just trying to get that body to do the best it can with what we know. Knowledge is power, and so we're just trying to assimilate knowledge, and that way we make the best choices that we can make. Yes, ma'am?
Do you have to frost tomatoes off because of this acid?
Not necessarily, but tomatoes are on the bottom, I think, if I'm reading this correct, or if I remember what this looks like. And tomatoes are actually considered a fruit, not a vegetable, and fruit should be eaten separately. I'm looking. Fruit are not, tomatoes are not listed in the neutral section, and fruit are historically considered a vegetable. Excuse me. Tomatoes are considered a vegetable. So tomatoes would be eaten separate. But remember, the neutral items, we can have a salad, and if you put a fruit, because remember, we've got the fruit up here,
Oh, okay.
and the vegetables, we can have those fruit with our neutral vegetables. So for example, a salad would be an okay thing to have together. We can put strawberries in our salad, or blueberries in our salad. So we can have those fruit with those neutral vegetables and still have a really good meal. Anything else, or do we want to try the little pasta salad that I made, which is full of vegetables, including the pasta? We used legume pasta, so red lentil pasta. And I probably shouldn't have said that. I probably should have just let you try it. But, and homemade Italian dressing. So I know exactly what's in this Italian dressing. And that's how it's a win-win. Alrighty, thank everybody for coming. Thanks for being on Facebook. If anybody has any questions, you're welcome to email us or give the office a call. Thank you.